Hello and welcome to this fast chat video interview with Comscope. I'm Paula Gilbert, the editor of Connecting Africa, and today we're talking about 5G rollout in Africa and some of the actions that operators can take to realize the full potential of 5G on the continent. To do that, I'm joined by Femi Oshiga, who's the VP of Outdoor Wireless Network Sales for MEA and APAC at Comscope. Welcome, Femi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. I'll jump straight into the questions. So, from your experience, obviously working in the market, what do you think are the critical factors that must be considered to ensure the successful deployment of 5G networks across the continent?
Well, I look at it in two ways. I see two critical factors. The first one is the demand, right? There are projections that suggest there will be about 300 million or about 20% of mobile connections, total mobile connections that will go to 5G. That seems reasonable. It's a lower percentage in other parts of the world, but nonetheless a big enough number to make an investment in 5G. So the volume of subscribers is out there in the future for us to go get. The second is the use cases, right? What's 5G going to bring beyond 4G? We're not yet quite seeing that, but we know that they are to come. What impact is it going to have on the education sector, the agricultural sector or industry, retail, enterprise, and so on, that will go beyond what we have from 4G today that are unique to 5G. You bring those two things together, 300 million people, use cases very specific to 5G, specific to Africa, and then you've got a very good set of, the demand curve is now there. The second is return on investment. 5G is not cheap. And we've seen many operators in the world and from richer countries who have deployed 5G and have not seen a fantastic return. In Africa, where we have lower outputs, we've got to be even more cautious, right? Making sure that for whatever investments we put in, we see a decent return. Not all the African MNOs or operators are healthy, so they cannot splash out in an inconsiderate manner. We've got to really be careful where they make investments. So put those two things together, and you can see where 5G is going or what the critical factors are.
Yeah, so what do you think are some of the main challenges or the roadblocks that your customers are facing this year?
Well, the first is cost, right? What's the cost of building a network? I read recently, over the last 5 years, African operators spent $45 billion in CapEx to build 4G networks, just in the last 5 years. Probably looking at a similar amount conservatively for 5G. And with 5G, we have the additional challenge of building up a much more capable backhaul that we see across the African continent today. So that's an additional cost as well to roll out a network. The second is spectrum. Again, here, I really hope that the governments look at the rollout of 5G as an opportunity to partner with network operators as opposed to a money-making venture, because if not, the operators will drown in further debt or they'll drown under the burden of paying for spectrum licenses. That's assuming they're available, because in many African countries, they're not available. So there are challenges around spectrum as well. The third would be device costs. So we know that number, $100, some $100 is what we're looking for devices for 5G to be extensively adopted around the world. For Africa, it's probably an even lower price point than that. Again, I saw a report recently suggesting that the GDP per capita or the price for a device relative to GDP per capita per month in Africa is 24%. That's still a challenge for most people. So we're not going to have $1,000 devices. We got to find the right price points for Africa. And then the final is the use cases, right? More than anywhere else, 5G has got to bring something that 4G does not. again, in the African context. So you've got to find the right use cases. And there are several that I can envisage like I said, in agriculture, in education, fixed wireless access as sort of the provision of broadband to homes and so on. So we solve some of these challenges, and we'll have a very successful 5G deployed base in about 7 years' time, 2030.
Yeah, I think we'll get into some use cases in a second. But first, I just want to ask you how CommScope is helping, African operators to mitigate some of these challenges that you just discussed.
So CommScope is a connectivity provider. We're a world leader in almost every space in which we play. We work very closely with the network operators and hyperscale providers around the world, many of them global. I'll give you some specific examples. So if you think of 5G, you think of cell sites. Well, at the cell sites, one key component is the antenna, is the base station antenna. So our job is to find ways of providing a single product that can encompass multi-bands, multi-technologies, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G in as small a footprint as possible, right? And of course, at the lowest possible price, right? So we're allowed to do that at the right price levels for the operators. A second example would be our Mosaic product. So we're trying to combine 4G, 5G with the 5G active radio behind what looks like an existing typical 3G, 4G, 5G, 3G, 4G antenna in the same footprint, right? And if you can do that, the operators save on site rentals and so on. Don't take up more space on the structures, on the tower structures out there in the field. A third would be, for example, something we call the 88R technology. This is an alternative to active technology, which is higher performing, yes, but a lot more costly and consumes a lot more power and so on. So you have something that's more energy efficient and more cost effective, probably more suitable for the African markets. So there are a lot of things that we can offer to our network operator partners. Similarly, we have data center solutions where we have different cable managements because there's a lot of traffic going through the data centers these days. And they have to really densify in the space that they have available, and they need to do it efficiently. So we have solutions there. And I mentioned backhaul earlier. We're probably one of the leading backhaul providers in terms of connectivity and the fiber cabling solutions and so on. So these are all different areas that the operators need to work on or expand, and we have solutions that help them.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you have any other case studies, maybe specifically for the enterprise market when it comes to 5G?
Yeah, well, if I had a definitive answer to that question, I wouldn't, I would probably be sitting somewhere else right now. But because we're all trying to figure out what those key apps will be, well, we know what is to come, right? I mean, we envisage killer apps in around agriculture, around education, certainly in manufacturing, retail, and enterprise. And the accumulation of several of these apps would then build an overall case. I'll give you an example. We deployed a private network, which is something 5G is well suited to provide for a prison in Europe, where the prison could have prisoners communicate, but not to the outside world, but still have all the resources available to have themselves educated, communicate with their families and in a limited manner and so on. But that was very beneficial for that particular establishment because they had this very simple private network based on 5G. You can imagine that for hospitals, factories, schools, and universities. There is, you name it. There's any number of cases. Another one I'm excited about for Africa is fixed wireless access. That last mile has always been a problem, and it's prohibitively expensive to resolve trying to deploy fiber to every home in Africa. That's near impossible in a short time frame anyway. So fixed wireless access, I think, at the right price points and would be very attractive, and backhaul, with 5G, would definitely be of interest, and I expect to take off in the African market. And then beyond that, everybody talks of driverless cars and, AI and AR, augmented reality. I think these will now follow on from the more enterprise cases that I mentioned earlier.
Very interesting. I must say, I don't think a prison is a use case I've heard before, but it's amazing to see the different kinds of things that 5G is being used for. We're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much to Femi Oshiga, VP of Outdoor Wireless Network Sales for MEA and APAC at CommScope.